All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to create a budget pacing sheet. So for multiple different campaigns, you can see how much of the month is complete and how much of the percent of the budget you've spent so far. So you can evenly pace and change multiple campaigns into the appropriate daily budget. Okay, so first I'm going to go over each one of these columns here and how to create them in the formula. So here, within your Google Ads account, you're going to want to grab each one of your campaigns as a name and export it so that you can track each individual campaign's budget by the row. And make sure you include the experiments and update the experiments as you go along here. And you manually put in the budgets that's allotted. So for each one of these campaigns, these are the associated budgets in this example. And I'll just give this one a budget as well. See that. So each one of these have an associated budget, and then you can see the total monthly budget at the very bottom. This is important to have because that's what's pulling directly from the percentage of budget spent here. Okay, so now that you have the campaign in this budget here, you're gonna wanna have an export from your Google Ads account of the actual spend month to date so far, so that can be pulled in. So I'll show you how to pull that report. All right, so to actually export data for your budget pacing sheet, you want to go to reports. And I already have a built-in report, but you essentially want your report to look like campaign and then cost. So you have the actual spends that you have this month. And you want to make sure all the campaigns you have in here actually spent money. So I'm just going to remove a handful of these. And you just want to export this. All right, once it's loaded up, you're just gonna want to grab the data here. So we don't need currency. So we can just simply grab this, copy it. And paste these values in here. So now we have the campaigns that you want to track, the monthly budgets associated with them. And then the next one we want to see is the actual spend month to date. So here, this is a VLOOKUP formula, which essentially, if we zoom in here a little bit, it's basically looking for the value that's in this column, locking it in, and then checking this range over here for the data that we pasted in, returning the second value, which is the actual spend month to date, and then making sure that's exact with false. So then that brings the actual spend month to date so far. So this is the first column. Next, we have percent deviation from budget here. So you can see that here it's locking in column R2. So you can go over here. So this is the percentage of the month completed so far. So these are basically working together. And essentially how you get this is simply days left, days that have passed the month, and then days in the month. And this is essentially calculated by using the day formula with the today formula inside here, -1. So you can see the days passed in the month. And then using the day formula again, and then end of month. And then this grabs essentially the day that it is today, and then doing 0. And this is the today formula. So these all essentially work together in order to get the percentage of the month completed that is working with deviation budget here. So you can see now that you have that, then the F2 is essentially back over here. is the actual spend month to date. So it's percentage, it's the actual spend divided by the percentage of the month completed, and that's how you get the percent deviation here. So percentage of the month minus the actual spend. Right here. Okay, going back to this deviation budget here, you can see that it's the locked in percentage of the month completed. Finally, going back to percentage of the budget spent. So this is being calculated by looking at the actual spend divided by the total budget for the month. So you can see how all these columns work together just to get this deviation, percent deviation from the budget month to date. And essentially, the closer to zero, the more on pace that this budget is. So essentially, when you're looking at this report and you're trying to manage multiple different campaigns' budgets, whether they're different geographic locations or whatnot, you'll say, okay, this one's overspending by a lot currently. So it's 40% deviated from the budget. So you're going to want to essentially make sure that you can spend more of this budget so you can go higher than some of these other budgets on the bottom here that are underpacing, such as right here. You can see that this is minus 3.4%. So it's basically on pace. So there's not much alterations that need to be made to make sure this campaign spends the actual budget for the month. If anything, then it's overspending $115. And this one right here is underspending $1,600. So it needs to push more budget in underpacing here at 40%. And you can see what the actual goal spend should be at this point in the month here. So you can get an idea, depending on how you want to look at the data and slice it, that this specific campaign right here has only spent $500. It should be at $2,100 at this point in the month. So it's only spent about 12% of its budget. So you can see how that kind of makes sense. 53% of the month. Deviation is about 40% underpacing. So that's how hard you really need to push this campaign. And then practically speaking, this daily target here is going to update consistently to essentially grab what your budget should be based on how much budget is left right here, how many days are left in the end of the month minus today, so you can get an idea of like what the daily target should be. So that's very, very helpful in doing daily or weekly updates on your campaigns to see where you should shift and change budget in a more practical speaking here. So finally, coming back to the very end of this report here, you don't necessarily need to be seeing all of these all the time, so you can just hide these rows and essentially see, okay, we have about 53% of the budget left. Campaign account wide of what I'm tracking, if we've only spent about 11% of the budget, and that's calculated essentially looking at these two values and summing the monthly budgets, the actual spend, and seeing the percentage of spend overall. And this gives you a rough idea of like, okay, how much are we underpacing right now and how hard do we need to push? What I often do is I copy this entire, all of this right here, and I sort the range by deviation from budget here. So you'll be able to see the percent deviation depending on how much they've spent. In this case, this one should be the biggest priority. So it's underpacing by about 53% right now. So you need to push spend more here. And these are the other priorities, but this one is basically right on pace. So this report is very helpful when you have multiple different campaigns and not an account-wide budget sheet This is also free to use. You don't need Supermetrics or anything like that, which I have tried to use in the past, but it was a headache. So I created this report. So I hope it's very helpful for you guys. I'll leave the link in the description as well. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.